Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You're watching L24 Nightly News. I'm your host, Mariam Zian, and here are your headlines. 104 Palestinians have died in 10 separate massacres committed by the Zionist occupation forces in the Gaza Strip, while intense raids on Gaza City left dozens of martyrs and wounded. Next, the Euromed Monitor received testimonies of field executions by Zionist forces at Gaza's Al-Shifa medical complex, and the United Nations urged action to prevent famine in the Strip. And Algeria renews its call to intensify efforts to deliver humanitarian aid to Sudan and calls on all Sudanese parties to adhere to the ceasefire agreement during the month of Ramadan. Welcome again to the program. Palestinian Ministry of Health in Gaza said Wednesday that the occupation army committed 10 massacres in the Strip during the past 24 hours, claiming 104 martyrs and 162 were wounded. The same source reported that the death toll from the Zionist aggression since the start of the occupation war on Gaza last October the 7th had risen to 31,923 martyrs and to more than 74,000 wounded. Dozens of Palestinians, predominantly children and women, have been killed and injured in the relentless bombardment of Gaza City by the occupying forces. Local reports indicate that numerous civilians lost their lives and many others sustained various injuries due to airstrikes targeting residencies near the Shifa medical complex, with a considerable number still trapped under the rubble. Additionally, casualties have occurred when airstrikes struck homes in the vicinity of the Al-Shati complex or camp and the Al-Kanz Mosque Square. At least 27 Palestinians were martyred and others were injured in a violent bombing carried out by the Zionist occupation aircraft at dawn on Wednesday on a house in the Nusayrat camp in central Gaza Strip. Local sources said that the martyrs, most of whom displaced, were killed while a number of citizens sustained various injuries in the bombing. A number of martyrs were also killed in a bombing by occupation aircraft on a house in the Burej refugee camp in central Gaza Strip. The government media office in Gaza said that the Israeli occupation killed more than 100 martyrs in 8 massacres, targeting rescuers and workers providing humanitarian aid within 1 week. In a statement issued on Wednesday, the media office stressed that the killings and massacres are part of the occupation strategy to perpetuate starvation and exacerbate famine on a larger scale, despite warnings from international organizations and institutions about the dangerous repercussions. The government media office in Gaza called on international organizations, entities, and countries worldwide to condemn the occupation's successive crimes and to put pressure on the occupation to stop the genocidal and starvation warfare. The Euro-Mediterranean Human Rights Monitor has announced that it received testimonies that the Zionist occupation forces carried out field executions against scores of displaced civilians inside the Al-Shifa medical complex in Gaza City. The Monitor confirmed that it collected testimonies about the death of 60 to 80 people by occupation forces bullets inside and around the Shifa medical complex since it was stormed again on Sunday night.
Eyewitnesses who left the medical complex in the latest hours reported to our team that they saw the occupation forces taking 8 to 10 civilians to the morgue Then they heard the sounds of intense gunfire before the forces returned without those civilians. We expressed deep concern about the situation in Al-Shifa medical complex and the dangers facing civilians, whether patients, health workers, or those displaced inside it, fleeing Israeli military attacks. We stress the necessity of protecting hospitals and healthcare facilities and the need for the UN and relevant international organizations to stop the serious Israeli attacks on hospitals in the Gaza Strip.
Western doctors who recently visited Gaza reported appalling atrocities and a collapsed healthcare system resulting from the ongoing occupation's offensive. The 4 doctors from the US, UK, and France have been assisting Gaza's healthcare system, which has been collapsing since the October 7th attack on the Strip. Nabil Khazini has more.
This is Gaza, a city caught between shelling and suffering. 6 months into the war, this is what the occupation has left in the Strip. Misery for as far as the eye can see. The occupation, insisting on its genocidal war, has caused a storm for major disease outbreaks and preventable illnesses, as basic sanitation and health facilities have totally collapsed, just as these doctors were in Gaza witness. For them, what they have seen in Gaza is a pure description of what they called the most appalling atrocities.
I think it's fair to say I wasn't remotely prepared for what I saw. I saw the most appalling atrocities, and I saw things that I never would have expected to have seen in any healthcare setting.
Doctors in Gaza find themselves facing a terrible dilemma. Every day, the hardship is mounting. They work with little to no equipment in the middle of a high risk of shelling or being caught in crossfire. The last attack on Al-Shifa hospital says it all. 90 people who were sheltering and getting treatment inside the medical facility died after an occupation attack. Many others still in hospitals are starving, making their recovery even harder.
Yes, we suffer from nutritional deficiencies and the lack of material that we can get. There are no vegetables nor fruits. Therefore, there are no natural nutritional elements available. We only depend on canned food now, but sometimes canned food prices go sky high.
Every morning brings hope for a ceasefire. But when? That's the question to which no one knows the answer. Until then, suffering remains written on the diary of every Palestinian in Gaza.
The United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres stressed the need for immediate action to save more than 1 million people in the Gaza Strip from the threat of famine. Guterres said that nothing justifies the collective punishment practiced by the Israeli occupation against the Palestinians in Gaza. He also called on the international community to make all possible efforts to stop the fighting and to ensure full and unrestricted access to humanitarian aid to all parts of Gaza.
Nothing justifies the collective punishment of the Palestinian people. Today, more than half of the population, over 1 million people, are facing catastrophic hunger, according to the scientific classification that was recently published. And so we must act now before it is too late.
The leader of the Palestinian Islamic Resistance Movement, Hamas, Oussama Hamdan, speaking from Beirut in a press conference on Wednesday, said that the movement monitors the behavior of the occupation with regard to the escalation of its crimes against the Palestinian people with every round of negotiations.
إننا نؤكد أن الحركة تراقب سلوك الاحتلال.
We affirm that the movement is monitoring the behavior of the occupation. With every round of negotiations, it escalates its crimes against our people, thinking that such crimes might gain it advantages at the negotiation table. We reiterate that the occupation has failed to take military battle and the crime of genocide. It will not take it with political tricks and negotiation games.
لن يأخذه بمكائد السياسة وألاعيب المفاوضات.
Hamdan also warned the occupation against continuing its violations and crimes against detainees in the Gaza Strip, holding Netanyahu's government responsible for their lives and safety. Let's take a listen.
إننا نحذر هذا العدو النازي.
We warn this Nazi enemy against its continued violations and crimes against the detainees in the Gaza Strip. We hold it responsible for their lives and safety, and we call on human rights institutions and the United Nations to intervene immediately to pressure the occupation for their immediate release.
من أجل الإفراج عنهم بشكل عاجل.
The Al-Qassam Brigades published scenes of its fighters confronting the Zionist occupation forces penetrating in the vicinity of Al-Shifa Medical Complex in Gaza City. Let's take a look.
الثلث الأخير يا أبي يحيى.
South African Foreign Minister Naledi Pandor accused the Zionist entity of setting a precedent and defying the decisions of the International Court of Justice. Naledi Pandor pointed out that the occupation has defied the ICJ's January ruling, which ordered the occupation state to do everything in its power to prevent genocide. She insisted again that Gaza is witnessing a deliberate starvation campaign. It's worth recalling that South Africa took the Zionist entity to the ICJ in December, accusing it of committing genocide in the military offensive it has been waging since October 2023. Algerian Minister of Foreign Affairs Ahmed Attaf received a phone call from the Minister of Europe and Foreign Affairs of the Republic of France, Stéphane Séjourné. They discussed in depth the ongoing discussions at the level of the UN Security Council regarding the Palestinian issue in general and in particular the unprecedented tragedy that the Palestinian people are experiencing in the Gaza Strip. A statement from the Algerian Foreign Ministry said the two parties agreed on the need for the Security Council to take action to contribute to addressing the deteriorating humanitarian situation in the Gaza Strip and to approve a permanent and unconditional ceasefire without further delay. In the same perspective, the two ministers stressed the need to revive the peace process in order to achieve a just, lasting, and final settlement of the Palestinian issue on the basis of the two-state solution. U.S. Department Deputy Spokesperson Vedant Patel told reporters on Tuesday that the UN Palestinian Refugee Agency UNRWA chief and staff should be able to visit the agency's fields of operation, including in Gaza. Patel said that he could not comment on why Lazzarini was prevented from entering Gaza after UNRWA, and Egypt said that Israel banned him from entering the Strip. Algerian President Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune received a delegation from the Algerian Economic Renewal Council, led by Kamel Moula, where he congratulated the Algerian Economic Renewal Council on its role in building the national economy, according to a statement by the Algerian presidency. On this occasion, President Tebboune emphasized the Council's patriotism and encourages all economic stakeholders to develop the economy. The same source added that the meeting discussed 6,103 investment projects worth 3,068 billion dinars, creating 150,000 jobs. Direct foreign investments reached 38 billion dinars, while partnership investment projects reached 844 billion Algerian dinars. After being received by Algerian President Abdelmajid Tebboune, the head of the Algerian Economic Renewal Council, Kamal Moula, said that the meeting was an opportunity to review the challenges facing economic operators, the issue of purchasing power, and the operators' contribution to reducing product prices during the month of Ramadan.
We spoke about some of the problems facing economic operators. We also spoke about boosting Algerian industry and how we will break from economic dependency and move towards self-sufficiency, notably in transformation industry and the industry's inputs. We also discussed an issue of a paramount importance for the President of the Republic, namely the purchasing power. He sent a letter to all the Algerian economic operators who contributed in the initiative of the Algerian Economic Renewal Council, aimed at lowering the prices of products during this holy month of Ramadan. And thank God, there has been a large response from the economic operators, and we have noticed that the prices have decreased and the goods were largely available in the market.
Algerian President Abdelmajid Tebboune also received on Wednesday the president of التالية party, Rida Ben Wennan, according to a statement by the Algerian presidency. After being received by President Tebboune, Mr. Ben Wennan affirmed his party's readiness to contribute to every effort to unite Algerians as well as to promote and advance the economy and defend national components.
أكدت لسيد رئيس الجمهورية استعداد حزبنا أي حزب طلائع الحريات.
I affirmed to the President of the Republic the readiness of our طلائع الحريات party to contribute to every effort aimed at uniting all Algerians, promoting and boosting our economy and defending our national components, strengthening and supporting our Algerian diplomacy and what it is currently undertaken, notably in the face of all the challenges.
لمواجهة كل التحديات.
Algeria has called on the member states of the United Nations Security Council to redouble efforts to deliver humanitarian aid to areas in Sudan affected by the armed conflict, especially across borders and in contact areas. Algeria's permanent representative to the United Nations, Ammar Ben Jama, said during his speech at a UN Security Council session devoted to examining the situation in Sudan that it is unreasonable that a country like Sudan faces the risks of severe food insecurity, even though it is known for its food resources and agricultural traditions.
Regarding the humanitarian situation on the ground, it is extremely concerning that 18 million people in Sudan are reportedly facing acute food insecurity. If we had the ability to reverse the hand of time, it would have been unimaginable for a country like Sudan, known as a breadbasket of its abundant resources and agricultural traditions, to face acute food insecurity risks. Regrettably, the war led to a different and sad reality.
Meanwhile, Benjama urged the Sudanese parties to adhere to a ceasefire as a preliminary and essential step, calling in the same context for the holding of a new round of negotiations as part of the Jeddah process.
The reality emphasizes the importance of a political solution to sustainably address the humanitarian crisis. The protagonists must therefore clearly commit to the ceasefire as a critical first step toward a political solution.
Sudan has called upon the UN Security Council to reconsider the sanctions imposed on it since 2005 concerning the Darfur region. Ammar Mohamed Mahmoud, the acting chargé d'affaires of Sudan's permanent mission to the UN, emphasized the necessity of lifting the sanctions during the Security Council session addressing the situation in Sudan and South Sudan.
Sudan for their statement.
Ending these sanctions will enable the Sudanese government to better protect civilians and efficiently deal with violations committed by the Rapid Support Forces militias, including atrocities against civilians and systematic destruction of infrastructure. The continuation of these sanctions will negatively affect the stability process in Sudan and the region.
More than 7 million Senegalese voters are gearing up for the presidential elections scheduled for March 24th. The elections come after weeks of unrest triggered by President Macky Sall's decision to postpone the polls. Senegalese citizens are hopeful that March 24th will mark the end of tensions as they elect their fifth president.
Since March 2024, Senegal has been in a state of constant tension following the Sonoko case, culminating in the imprisonment of Sonoko and members of his party. The postponement of the elections has only served to exacerbate this tension. However, Senegal boasts solid institutions, as evidenced by a Constitutional Council's stance against the decision to delay the elections, which they promptly communicated to the President of the Republic. Consequently, the elections are scheduled to proceed as planned on March 24th.
Following the European Union's temporary agreement to extend tariff-free access for Ukrainian food producers until June 2025, farmers in Poland and the Czech Republic intensify their protests. They demand the reinstatement of customs duties on agricultural imports from Ukraine, alleging that the influx of cheap imports from Ukraine is making it impossible for them to compete. Russian President Vladimir Putin pledged to ensure the security of border areas repeatedly targeted by Ukrainian forces. During a meeting with activists in the Kremlin, Putin emphasized Russia's commitment to safeguarding its territory. He asserted that while Russia has plans to respond, it will not target civilians or infrastructure in Ukraine.
The primary task is to ensure security. There are different ways. They are not easy, but we will do it. I have already spoken about it. I don't want to go into details in this festive surroundings, but we will continue working on it.
European Foreign Commissioner Josep Borrell intends to propose using 90% of the proceeds from frozen Russian assets in the EU to purchase weapons for Ukraine. Borrell's proposal aims to strengthen Ukraine's defense capabilities amidst the ongoing conflict. He plans to present the proposal to EU member states ahead of the European Union Leaders Summit. Borrell emphasized the need to support Ukraine in its defense efforts against Russia. And for more global insights, let's watch this report compiled by Marwa Belawar.
New Delhi has retained its position as the world's most polluted capital city for the fourth year in a row since 2018, as revealed in a report unveiled by Swiss air quality technology company IQ Air. Despite concerted efforts by both state and central authorities to enhance the air quality index, pollution levels in the Indian capital surged during the winter months of 2023 and 2024. Italy's Sicily is grappling with a severe drought after a lack of winter rainfall, raising concerns the island could become one of the few regions in Europe's red drought zone. The southern Italian region is experiencing its hottest winter in 16 years. The regional government of Sicily declared a state of emergency, with water being rationed for agricultural and residential use. Peru's Universidad Nacional Mayor de San Marcos announced on Wednesday the discovery of a skull belonging to the largest dolphin to ever roam the waters of what is now the Amazon. Experts said these animals lived around 16 million years ago and measured between 3 to 3.5 meters long. Finland once again tops the World's Happiness Report, which was released on Wednesday, and measures social support, income, health, freedom, generosity, and the absence of corruption to determine a country's national happiness. Finland is top in the list for a 7th year in a row, closely followed by Denmark and Iceland.
That was it for tonight's broadcast. If you missed any part of it, you can check it in our social media platforms. Thank you for tuning in. Take care and have a good night.